Good evening, welcome to Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross, on the 27th of May. Joining me in the studio this evening is Chris McCusker, a regular contributor to the programme. Welcome back to the programme, Chris.
Good evening, Gordon.
Nice to see you again, Chris. We'll be talking some more a little bit later on in the show, but first of all, the coronavirus update. And as of 2 o'clock today, a total of 222,000. Let me start that again. 2,022,325 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. And of these, 1,788,654 have been confirmed negative. 233,671 have tested positive. There are 464 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There were 0 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who've died from complications caused by COVID-19 infections now stands at 7,666. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 83 were in hospital last night, 4 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 3,174,807 people have now received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 1,942,285 have received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 127,758 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness. This is an increase of 10 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just in hospitals. Now to tonight's main news headlines. Boris Johnson and Mr Hancock dismiss Cummings' claims of chaos and lies. The UK government has launched a fight back against Dominic Cummings after he accused ministers of a chaotic and incompetent response to the COVID pandemic, which led to tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths. Boris Johnson said, following the testimony of his former chief advisor on Wednesday, that some of the claims didn't bear any relation to reality. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, dismissed allegations that he lied in Cabinet and to the public as unsubstantiated and not true. Westminster was still reeling after Cummings' 7-hour evidence session with 2 parliamentary committees when he delivered excoriating analysis of the government's response to the coronavirus, saying that it was lions led by donkeys over and over again. Focusing his attacks on the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister in particular, Cummings said that Johnson was unfit for office, constantly U-turned and ignored scientists' advice to order a second national lockdown. He accused Hancock of lying to everybody on multiple occasions in meeting after meeting in the Cabinet room and publicly, and of criminal behaviour for holding back COVID tests so that he could meet his stupid target of reaching 100,000 tests a day by the end of April. Now, Chris, I guess we've all been following the outburst, I think you could say, from Dominic Cummings over the past few days. But there certainly are a few incendiary claims in here, aren't there?
Just one or two, Gordon. People will look at this and think that it's a disgruntled employee who's having his blistering attack at his ex-employer. But I think it's more than that. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know that Cummings is a proven liar. With a shadow of a doubt, the whole Barnard Castle incident tells you all you need to know about that. But what gets me is I always remember my mum and dad used to, they used to say to me that when you are known as a liar, then it's hard to shrug that label off. So when you're looking for credibility in what Cummings has said, I think that it will come out in the fullness of time over the course of the next couple of weeks, because the committee that he appeared in were at pains to ask for the collaborating evidence, to the outlandish claims that he was making. And if he can back that up with emails or WhatsApp messages or screenshots or whatever, then not only is Matt Hancock going to be toast, then Boris Johnson is going to be toast as well.
Well, Chris, when you talk about corroboration of some of the things that Mr. Cummings was saying, it's been widely publicised today that one of the government's chief scientific officers had said that if they didn't lock down a week early, then there would be tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths, because as he pointed out at that time, before that lockdown, the numbers of cases were doubling every day. So you could have had 10,000 cases, one day, 20,000 the next. He said it was going up so fast that if they delayed it for 7 days, it would be a catastrophe and tens of thousands of people would die unnecessarily. So there is at least something to what Mr. Cummings is saying, surely.
Well, there is going to be something to what he was saying. The revelations about the fact that he alleges that he told Boris all about this way back in early January, and Boris was of a mind that it was nothing more than a scare story, and he was likening it to SARS, and that is shocking in itself, to say the least. Because it shows the lackadaisical approach that the UK government took towards this. There was even one spurless claim that his fears were not brought to the fore because they were debating as to whether they were going to start bombing parts of Asia along with the US government. So you had several committees running alongside one another. Cobra was superseding the pandemic, and and the pandemic was superseding Cobra, and Cummings wasn't attending certain meetings and he was sending other people to go in his stead, and Boris Johnson wasn't attending. It really plays out to be a catastrophe of epic proportions.
Chris, there was one other very remarkable claim made by Mr. Cummings, and that was that Boris Johnson had even suggested that he might be injected deliberately with COVID-19 in front of the TV cameras to prove how harmless it was. I mean, can we take that seriously?
Well, it's very Trumpian, to say the least.
Certainly is.
It's absolutely laughable to think. I would be interested to see what the timescale of that was. Was that after he contracted COVID-19, allegedly, or was it before he contracted COVID-19? Because
apparently it was before, Chris.
Right, but I mean, even at that, I mean, surely, after if he had COVID, then he would do all that he could in order to bury a kind of story like that, because it just shows him up to be a ridiculous buffoon.
Well, I think there are many people thinking the same thing, Chris, today, reading what Mr. Cummings has been saying. Anyway, Chris, we need to move on. I'm sure we could spend a lot of time dissecting what Mr. Cummings has said, but we need to get on with the next story. The SNP MPs have piled on the pressure over Brexit damage due to Scottish businesses. Today in the House of Commons, multiple SNP MPs highlighted the damage Brexit is having on businesses in Scotland through increased costs and red tape, and has urged the UK government to mitigate these costs, given that Scotland didn't vote for Brexit. Stuart Hosey MP raised the huge increases in post-Brexit shipping costs for the company Wild Mode in his constituency of Dundee East. Before Brexit, the company paid almost nothing for shipping, and now it's been quoted around €1,000. The SNP's Cabinet Office spokesperson also told the UK government that ATL Turbines, a company which imports vital turbine parts from Europe and around the world, faces post-Brexit administration costs of 10 to 15 times higher than last year. The SNP's Brexit spokesperson, Philippa Whitford MP, raised the case of sportswear company Fox Drive, facing significantly higher costs, and pointed out the Tories' hard Brexit is driving UK businesses to move operations to Europe. The Glasgow North East SNP MP, Anne McLaughlin, condemned the UK government for the 23% fall in UK exports to the EU in the first quarter of this year. And Patrick Grady MP told the Cabinet Office it was clear that the Tory government is in chaos following the bombshell evidence from Dominic Cummings yesterday. So as if it wasn't bad enough for the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to be being slagged off by his previous special advisor, the SNP are putting the boot in about what's happening to Scottish businesses. But surely they're right to put the boot in, because businesses are being hurt, aren't they?
Absolutely, quite right. And it seems that it's only the SNP that are actually continuing to put pressure on the UK government with regards to Brexit. It looks to me that the Lib Dems, who were totally against Brexit, campaigned for a second referendum, and it seems that they've went pretty much quiet on the whole issue. Labour are just all over the place. Keir Starmer, I don't think, knows if he's coming or going, to be quite honest with you. And that only leads the coalition, well, not the coalition, but the joining support of Plaid Cymru and the Greens, who unanimity, what's the word? Unanimity.
Yes.
Yeah. They have unanimity along with the SNP as regards to Brexit. So I don't see the Labour benches having any credibility, seeing as how they're too busy trying to get Keir Starmer up in the popularity stakes, and the Tories don't want to mention Brexit because they know it was a complete disaster, and they are just going to carry on regardless. It will undoubtedly hit Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland far harder than what it will the southeast of London or the southeast of England. And that is why the Tories don't give two hoots about Brexit, because it's not going to affect their backyard. It's only they don't really care about what happens anywhere else.
Well, it certainly looks that way, Chris. I mean, one of the things I noticed about this list of companies which were quoted in the story this evening is that there aren't any food companies amongst these, I don't think. And it was originally the food and beverage industry which was hardest hit, wasn't it?
Well, the beverage industry were the first ones to actually come out, especially seafood producers were the first ones to come out, when we had all that debacle going on at the port of Dover, talking about nearly 30 different declarations in order to get filled out. And if one of them was not filled out correctly, they were sent to the back of the queue. We had stories about foodstuffs going off because they were left in sidings and unrefrigerated, whatnot, what have you. There was even stories about companies who done the work of actually working out how much it will cost from A to B to C, and basically deciding that it just wasn't worth their while.
I was going to say, Chris, that traditionally we think of exports to Europe as going across the English Channel, don't we? But the Irish government recently published some trade figures which showed in their statistics, at least, that imports into the Irish Republic from the United Kingdom have virtually dried up. And exports from the Irish Republic to the United Kingdom seem to have risen slightly. So it's having an effect not just on Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, but also seems to be having an effect on the south.
Well, because this is what the Tories have created. The Tories have created this centralism where everything has to go through their main hub, and the main hub is Dover. With the exception of Felixstowe as well. So everything has got to go through there. And we know for a fact that when Scotland exports into the EU and it goes down to England, it's actually not counted as a Scottish export because it's going through the port of Dover and the port of Felixstowe. Then it's actually claimed as GB goods.
Well, I suppose technically, they could claim that, Chris, because Scotland's still part of the United Kingdom, isn't it?
Well, unfortunately, yes. We're not preaching to the masses on that one.
Yeah.
But the point is the fact that it means that the likes of Scottish lamb, Scottish beef, Scottish salmon, once it goes down, if it's singly packed. Yeah. If it's if it's not box packed and stuff like that, if it's singly packed, then it can be claimed, as we've seen with the banana fiasco. It can be claimed as a British produce.
That's interesting, Chris. I never knew that. Anyway, I will take that on advisement.
Have a word with Ruth Watson. She'll put you right on it.
I'll take your word for that, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we need to move on. And the UK public apparently thinks that COVID universal credit uplift should be permanent. There is widespread public backing for permanently retaining the £20 a week COVID uplift to universal credit as a part of a more generous social security benefits for disabled people, carers and young adults, the research has found. The Fabian Society's year-long study of public attitudes to welfare revealed a groundswell of support for increasing universal credit for about 4.6 million households at a cost of £17 billion per year. Andrew Harrop, the General Secretary of the Fabian Society and the co-author of the research, said that this in-depth study of public attitudes shows that people in the UK want most families who are eligible for universal credit to get more money. The Fabian Society said a public survey and online citizens' jury had identified consensus support for £10 billion of extra payments on top of the £7 billion the £7 billion cost of retaining the £20 a week universal credit boost. This package, which would take welfare spending back to 2013 levels, would reduce child poverty rates by 1/3. These additional payments comprise £10 a week extra on benefits for severely disabled people, carers and families with children, £14 a week extra for working lone parents, disabled people and second earners in couples, a £16 a week boost for 18 to 24-year-olds and a £30 a week extra for carers of babies and toddlers. So, Chris, it seems there's a great deal of public support, not just in Scotland here, but across the United Kingdom, for the uplift in benefits to be made permanent, for this £20 uplift in universal credit to be made permanent. Is there any realistic prospect, do you think, that the government will listen to this and will action it?
Not at all. Absolutely not at all. I have zero confidence in the Tory government doing anything that will put extra money in normal working class people's pockets. There is just no way. It is against their raison d'etre. It goes against everything that they stand for and believe. And it's only with the Scotland actually being able to have certain powers over social security that we've actually been able to start a body of work. Shona Robertson and Ben McPherson actually starting a body of work on carrying on from the previous MSP, Leslie, was it Shirley Ann Somerville?
Yeah.
And a radical change in how Social Security is approached in Scotland.
So, Chris, do you think? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think that the SNP, given its tight budget constraints, would be able to afford to do this themselves, to actually uplift people's benefits by £20 a week in these specific areas, the way that's been described?
Well, let's put it this way. If we were an independent country, Gordon, we would be able to borrow the same way as the UK government borrow, and we would be able to devise a better social security system, which has got dignity, fairness, and respect at its heart. It wouldn't be this means-tested type of arbitrary way that the Tory government tend to view people, especially disabled people, and especially carers. At the moment, I get paid 86 pence an hour in order to look after my elder brother. And I'm thankful to the Scottish government for the fact that they have said that their carers allowance supplement will be doubled to £460 in December of this year. Whether that's a one-off payment or not, I'm seeking clarification for that. But even just to get that recognition is absolutely wonderful.
Chris, it's often quoted, particularly in the UK press, that Scotland receives a lot of money through the Barnett formula, but because the Barnett formula cuts in the opposite direction as well. So if there is a cut in the spending on social security in the rest of the United Kingdom, then that cut appears in the Scottish ledger as well, doesn't it? So we can't really increase not the handouts, but the assistance that is given to people who need it.
Yeah, but you have to remember the fact that the Barnett formula was actually devised by the Tories in order to keep. It was basically devised in order to keep Scotland down and not allow Scotland to progress at a natural pace of any other nation. Who had control over its destiny. Bearing in mind the fact that we don't have the fiscal levers to allow us to progress, we don't have the levers that are necessary in order to eradicate, well, not eradicate, but to at least chip away at the child poverty. We don't have the proper levers in order to allow inward migration so that we can boost the economy through, jobs and stuff like that, so that people can actually have a job and actually pay into the community and get that liquidity of money swirling around the community so that the economy in itself is, at least buoyant in order for for the country to, move on and invest.
Chris, Chris, I'd like to stop you there because I think that's an excellent way to finish this piece, because what you're pointing out is the fact that money is going to be spent in the domestic economy of Scotland, and therefore it benefits all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, which is the basest argument at the sole ethos of having a UBI would allow that liquidity to run round so that when people spend in shops and in the communities, it goes into the economy.
Of course.
And it's that old thing that your mum and dad used to say to you years ago: what goes around comes around.
Well, excellent point to leave that story on, Chris. Let's move on now. And ministers reopen a hunt for an Ofcom chair after Paul Dacre has been rejected. The former Daily Mail editor, Paul Dacre, has been rejected for the role of the chair of broadcasting regulator Ofcom, being described as not appointable by Ofcom executives. Dacre has been an outspoken critic of the BBC for many years and continues to hold an official position within the Daily Mail, where he has also publicly criticised his successor. Despite 3 other candidates having been approved by the panel, the UK government had taken the decision to rerun the application process. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has previously made clear that he favours Dacre for the job, which some feel has undermined the impartiality of the process. Alongside the UK press oversight, Ofcom is responsible for the regulation of Royal Mail and the UK's phone networks. It also is set to be given control over social media regulation under new legislation covering online harm. Fewer than 10 candidates applied for the position following the UK government's public support for Mr Dacre. The former Daily Mail man was the only shortlisted candidate to be rejected by the panel, which included a civil servant and members of the Ofcom board. So, Chris, despite what the Prime Minister might want for the head of Ofcom, it seems that the board members of Ofcom itself disagree completely with them and have rejected Mr Dacre out of hand.
Well, they obviously view him as a toxic character, and anybody that's got associations with Boris Johnson you could possibly be viewed as such. The oversight of Ofcom as well, bearing in mind the recent stories that we've had coming out of the BBC, with regards Princess Diana, the whole Martin Bashir thing, has long been a source of sort of like quandary to me, because I can't quite understand what Ofcom actually stands for. Because if it has been proven, albeit 25 years after the fact, that it was an interview which was gained by, shall we say, devious.
Yes, there was a deception, wasn't there?
Yeah. There was, it was devious to say the least, in order to secure that. There was also, if you look at the Jimmy Savile case, if you look at Suzanne Danielle. Dando, and all these things that have never been brought to light, you have to wonder what the hell Ofcom are actually all about.
So, what would you say, Chris? Do you think Ofcom is toothless, or do you think it has a political role in controlling the output of the BBC?
No, I don't think it's got a role in the output of the BBC. I think it's timid, as you say, toothless. It doesn't want to rock the boat. Obviously, it enjoys. I presume it enjoys the money that obviously trickles in from the BBC funding and television funding in general. But what actually, again, the bigger question is, what would happen to Ofcom if the BBC went to a subscription service? Where would it get the money from? Is it?
Just to clarify, Ofcom sort of is responsible for regulating things like ITV and the standard of advertising and so on.
Yes, and what I was going on to say is, what is the level of subsidy? What did they get from advertising? What did they get from all the rest of it? What did they get? What is the percentage that they get from the BBC? What is the percentage they get from advertising?
So, Chris, they are funded, of course, by the communications industry. So I would imagine they're funded by private companies who own television stations, maybe also radio stations.
Yeah, but it's all very well saying that, right? But you're the average Joe, you're the layman in the street, possibly doesn't know anything about Ofcom. Yes, they know that it's a regulatory body, but they don't know who funds it, or where, how they operate, what the auspices of
Yeah.
its powers are.
So would you say, Chris, that Ofcom is too opaque? It's not transparent enough?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think it is. It's something that we've just become accepted, as the fact that, oh, if you're upset about the television content, you can write to Ofcom. I've never heard of anybody actually getting a reply from them.
Well, again, Chris, we'll take that on advisement as your own personal experience. But I know from experience, I tend to agree with you on that. Anyway, sadly, we have to move on to our next story. The Greens have called for more support for asylum seekers. The Scottish Greens co-leader and the Glasgow MSP, Patrick Harvie, has called for more support for asylum seekers in the face of poor treatment by the Home Office and outsourced accommodation provider Mears in Glasgow. Mr Harvie has used First Minister's questions to highlight a new campaign by the Roof Coalition of charities, including Shelter, which highlights the fact that pregnant women and mothers of children younger than 2 are being housed in completely unsuitable accommodation in the city since January. The Freedom to Crawl campaign calls for no more women and children to be relocated to the facility and vulnerability assessments to be conducted by an independent family support specialist agency. Patrick Harvie said that from dawn raids to poor accommodation, it's clear that the rights of asylum seekers in Glasgow are not being upheld by the Home Office and Mears. Immigration is reserved to the UK government, but Mr Harvie has urged the Scottish government to do more in Scotland to protect the human rights of asylum seekers. Meanwhile, in a letter to the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel today, the Cabinet Secretary for Constitution and External Affairs, Angus Robertson, has called for a more humane approach to immigration enforcement following the immigration enforcement action in Glasgow on the 13th of May. The Cabinet Secretary wrote that a more humane approach to immigration enforcement is required, one which reflects the views and values of Scottish communities and does not involve the heavy-handed approach of raids which are disruptive to our communities, are inherently divisive and risk public health, as well as taking up valuable police resources. Chris, we all witnessed the events on Kenmure Street recently when there was an attempted abduction. I think it's not too harsh a term to use, of 2 alleged illegal migrants. It was being alleged that they didn't have a right to remain. We've seen how Scottish people react when the British government is heavy-handed about immigration. Do you think that that particular event, where thousands of Scottish people, Glasgow people from all over the city, converged on that site to prevent those people being taken, do you think that is a sign of things to come in Scotland if the same thing happens again?
Well, yeah, I can speak in authority on this because I was actually there that day, and I spoke to several activists. Rosa Saleh, obviously being one of them, a long time standing comrade sister of mine, and Amir Anwar as well. They all to a man stood up and basically pointed out the fact that these people, at the end of the day, were humans. They weren't pieces of meat just to be dragged out from a flat and bundled in the back of a van and taken away and never to be seen again. And it's something that the UK government seemed to have absolute zero tolerance towards anyone, who overstays their welcome. The point in question, one of the gentlemen that actually was bundled into the van, I think his nickname was Lucky. And he's a well-known character in Pollokshields community, and well liked. But it was down to the COVID restrictions that he actually had overstayed. It was down to the fact that he could not move. He wasn't allowed
restrictions to flights.
Because of the restrictions. Now, at the end of the day, I had pointed out as well to the officer in command is the fact that the Scottish government had put a moratorium in place, as COVID started, the fact that there would be no evictions in Scotland due
Yes.
to the COVID pandemic. And she had taken all this on board. And she got it thick from myself. She got it from Rosa. She got it from Amir. Everybody that was talking to them, but they were not there, to
listen.
facilitate the UK border force to do that. They were only there in, a capacity of controlling the crowd for the, general peace and, order, whatnot, what have you. So it is well known the fact that Scotland has got far more tolerance and far more empathy towards asylum seekers and refugees, who come to this country and want to actually contribute to society. It's a stark, it's a completely chalk and cheese way that the UK government have built up this right-wing rhetoric of the fact that migration is bad and and we've got to pull up the drawbridges and whatnot, what have you. They're stealing your benefits, and they're not stealing benefits because they don't get any benefits.
You're not allowed them as an asylum seeker. Anyway, listen, Chris.
Because
I'm sorry to stop you, but we need to move on, I'm afraid, because I know we'd like to spend more time on this subject, but time is against us this evening, sorry. Anyway, let's move on. And the SNP has condemned the Tories' refusal to heed warnings over its Australian trade deal. The SNP has criticised the Tory government for failing to heed the warnings of Scotland and the UK's farming sectors. In today's urgent question on the Australian trade deal, the SNP's trade spokesperson, Drew Hendry MP, called out the Tory government for failing to listen to those at the sharp end, after quoting Martin Kennedy, the president of the National Farming Union of Scotland. Mr Kennedy had said that the seafood industry had already been hit hard by Brexit, and now Scottish farming is next to be sacrificed, and once again, it is Scotland's key industries that will bear the brunt of a Tory Brexit, which the people of Scotland didn't vote for. NFU England and the RSPCA have also criticised the deal in its current form, particularly the fact that it includes tariff-free access for Australian agricultural produce. The MP for Inverness, Nairn, Badenoch and Strathspey demanded the UK government rule out tariff-free access for agricultural imports and a guarantee that the deal will not threaten Scotland's progress and plans to tackle climate change, given that Australia has already been widely criticised for failing to live up to its potential in the global fight to address the climate crisis. Chris, I've heard a number of things said about this Australia trade deal, but the UK government giving complete tariff-free access for Australian farming produce does have some risks attached to it, don't they?
Has more risks and implications than you can care to shake a stick at. It was a couple of weeks ago, I think I touched on the point of TTIP, which is the transatlantic trade and partnership that Donald Trump was trying to progress, whilst he was in office, which not only allows the deregulation of all the way that foodstuffs are actually treated.
So the quality would suffer, Chris.
Sorry?
So you're saying that the quality will go down as a result of these lower
quality
standards?
Will go down, and it's not just on what you would naturally think, like chickens and cows and sheep and all the rest of it. This actually goes down as well to crops, which encompasses grains, and the fact that Australia and America both use pesticides in their crop dusting, and so there is also the fact that they grow genetically modified food, cereals and pulses and stuff like that.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
People have got to actually have a choice, and if these aren't labelled correctly, then people won't know exactly what they're eating.
The other thing I was going to say, Chris, and I wanted to ask you about, is that there is also a risk, I believe, and farmers are very worried about this in Scotland, that with such an open-ended trade deal, with such low regulations, might enable the Australians, with their, shall we say, non-environmentally friendly farming techniques, to flood the Scottish market with cheap produce with which they can't compete. Do you think there's a risk of that?
There definitely is, because the Australian stations that they use to slaughter their livestock are just about the same size as any of the slaughterhouse stations in America. And if you look at just a small analogy, if you look at the average size of a British car and you look at the average size of an American car, then that will give you roughly the idea of what size I'm talking about with regards to slaughterhouses in America compared to the slaughterhouses in Britain. These are huge, massive, big hangars, which are completely not completely non-sanitized, but they are regularly hosed down with bleach, whatnot, what have you. The actual foodstuffs themselves have been treated, with the actual beef is injected with chlorine and hormones, whatnot. It is absolutely horrendous. That in itself, when just talking about that is enough to make your eyes water. Yep. But the actual TTIP agreement itself brings into trade union rules. It also brings in workers' rights. Yeah. It brings in working time directive. It brings in holidays. Chris, you name it, it's a fire sale.
Yeah, because we're not talking about TTIP here, Chris, but I understand the analogy. We're talking about an Australian trade deal, so we don't know really whether that would be true with this one. Anyway, Chris, I'm sorry. I know Australia has very bad labour relations record as it is. Anyway, let's move on. And we're moving to Russia now. Russia says that it has expelled a UK warship from its waters near annexed Crimea. A senior Russian security official said on Thursday that Moscow had used its Navy and Air Force to expel a British warship, HMS Dragon, from what he described as Russian territorial waters near the Russian annexed Crimea last October. Russia annexed the Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, drawing sanctions and condemnation from the West. Kiev wants the territory back. Vladimir Kulishkov, the first deputy head of the FSB security service, said that Russia had told the vessel not to enter its waters, but that it had crossed what he said was the border on October the 13th near the southern Crimea. He said that HMS Dragon had invoked the right of innocent passage, a concept which allows ships to transit through territorial waters of foreign coastal states in a manner not prejudicial to their peace, good order or security. Kulishov told Russia's RIA news agency in an interview that Moscow had demanded that the vessel immediately leave its waters. To which the warship's captain replied that there was a poor signal reception. The warship was driven out into neutral waters by the joint action of the Russian Navy and the Air Force, Kulishov was quoted as saying. There's been no immediate comment from the British Defence Ministry. This is an interesting one, Chris. The British Navy, wonder what they were doing off the Crimea. It's certainly, I'm no fan of the Russians, and I certainly was no fan of them annexing Crimea. But do you think the Russians had the right to do what they did?
I think if the British ship had no business being there, then I'm not siding with the Russians, but at the end of the day, if it's an agreed maritime sort of like protocol that that you can't sort of like travel through a certain body of water and whatnot, and what have you, then they had no right to do that. If there was something wrong with the ship, they're claiming that there was a poor signal. Maybe there was something wrong with the communications or the satellite guidance or something like that, then, fine, fair and well. To make out some sort of political incident, I mean, this happened way back in June.
I think they claimed that it happened in October, Chris, last year.
Well, it was, yeah, but I think there was also a meeting on sometime in June with regards the actual movement of safe passage, or that what is it you said, the right
to innocent passage, yes.
Innocent passage, yeah. So I mean that meeting, I think, actually was attended with in conjunction with President Biden.
Well, it certainly seems that the Russians are claiming to have seen off the British ship and its incursion. I think whether they had a bad signal or not, as soon as they're challenged by whoever's territorial waters it is, that right of innocent passage, I think, under international rules, can be overruled by whichever country is it's their territorial waters.
Well, anyway. I would assume so, but I mean, a ship's not like a car. You just can't do a 360.
Oh no, of course not. But of course, yeah, I think, Chris, of course, the British Navy tends to operate in waters which are disputed territories. Sometimes it's a challenge, I think, to the Russians to see how they'll respond. Anyway, the Ukraine is still claiming this territory, apparently. Anyway, let's move on now. And EU sanctions are expected to hit Belarus's potash, oil and finance industries. EU officials are set to go forward with sanctions on Belarus, following the onboard abduction of an anti-government journalist, Roman Protasevich. The pressure's mounting on the Belarusian government after the US President, Joe Biden, also condemned the action by the Belarusian government, calling it an assault on both the political dissidents and the freedom of the press, as well as a direct affront to international norms. The sanctions will be levelled against Belarusian oil exports, finance and the exportation of potash, a potassium-rich salt which serves as one of the country's top exports. Meanwhile, the street in the Romanian capital Bucharest, where the Belarusian embassy is located, could be renamed in honour of the journalist as a gesture of solidarity after his dramatic arrest, if plans proposed by a Bucharest University professor are implemented, the district mayor has said. The 26-year-old, who was the subject of the now infamous act of air piracy on Sunday the 23rd of May, had been involved with the covering and broadcasting of anti-government protests against the Premier Alexander Lukashenko and the Belarusian regime. The sanctions will look to begin on the 21st of June this year. Now, Alexander Lukashenko is not a popular man, is he? The Belarusians don't like him. Even Vladimir Putin's news agency apparently thinks he is thuggish. So does he have any friends left anywhere, Chris? Or do you think this is his last hurrah? He's going to be overseeing the demise of his country's exporting industries because of these sanctions?
No, I don't think it will be his last hurrah. I'm sure characters like Lukashenko have got more than one ace up the sleeve. And he does enjoy a certain amount of favour from Vladimir Putin. Whilst the EU and the wider Western world will, call for sanctions against the Belarusian government, I think globally people have to realise the fact that they are one of the biggest producers of potash, and coming into the Western world. It's a commodity that is desperately, well, not desperately needed, but is definitely will be missed if it's not widely available. It's the one thing that keeps the Belarusian economy going.
Okay. Well, listen, Chris, we need to move on to our next story. This time we're moving to the United States, where a US judge says that Donald Trump's election falsehoods still pose a security risk. A US judge said that there is a risk that Donald Trump's supporters could still carry out attacks similar to the deadly January the 6th assault on the US Capitol, noting that the former president's near-daily fulminations about his election loss have not subsided. The US District Judge Amy Berman Jackson made the remark in a written decision on Wednesday, explaining why she would continue to jail Cleveland Meredith Jr. while he awaits trial on charges that he texted about putting a bullet in US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's head. The steady drumbeat that inspired the defendant, Mr. Meredith, to take up arms has not faded away 6 months later. The canard that the election was stolen is still being repeated daily on major news outlets and from the corridors of power in the state and federal government, not to mention in the near-daily fulminations of the former president, Jackson said in her partially redacted ruling. Jackson noted that the charges against Meredith were particularly serious. Not only did the defendant threaten to wreak mayhem in general in the nation's capital, he used graphic and misogynistic language to threaten to kill particular public figures in the district in specific and violent ways. Federal prosecutors charged Meredith with making the threats and illegally possessing a gun and ammunition, according to court documents. Meredith was not present for the January the 6th attack on the Capitol, telling investigators that he had to stop for car repairs during the drive from Colorado, according to the authorities. He arrived in Washington late on January the 6th and wrote in a text message on January the 7th that he wanted to put a bullet in Pelosi's noggin, according to the prosecutors. It's amazing, isn't it, Chris, that so many months after Mr. Trump's defeat at the hands of Joe Biden, that he and his supporters are still perpetuating these untruths about what's happened, even to the point where this judge is seriously, considering making sure that this doesn't go away and that this particular defendant is arraigned and kept out of public life. Do you think that there is still a risk from these dissidents, these internal terrorists, if you want to call them that, Chris?
This is what commentators. When I'm watching commentators on the mainstream media, and I think this is a glory moment. Well, this is my glory moment, is the fact that I told everybody. Who was listening, that just because Donald Trump lost the election, Biden won, Trump would just trope off and never to be heard again. This guy is going to keep turning up like a bad penny, and he's orchestrating the media in America that is still putting around the myth that the election was stolen, it was fraudulently won, it was, won by deceit, and Trump's still out there. Trump's still a major character. Maybe not in the relevant political terms, but he's definitely still out there. He's still very, very dangerous, as is his troops, his followers, these right-wing rednecks that kind of reckon that America being the land of the home, the brave and the free. I actually heard that there's a county in Texas who are actually trying to get people to carry gun arms without a license.
Yes, I heard that as well.
They're actually trying to put that through. Just one actually beggars belief as to where what direction America is going in. It really is.
Chris, thank you for that. Moving on to our final story this evening. The Misuse of Drugs Act, the 50th anniversary. The SNP is calling for drug consumption rooms and wider reforms. On the 50th anniversary of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, the SNP has pledged support for the all-party campaign to reform drugs laws, including decriminalisation and renewed calls for immediate action on drug consumption rooms. The Misuse of Drugs Act 1971 was designed to prevent drug use and to reduce harm. But since it came into effect, there's been a dramatic rise in drug use, addiction and deaths in the UK. The all-party parliamentary group on drug policy reform met today to discuss the issues and how to reform UK drug policy to address the current failings of the Act. In March, the SNP MP, Tommy Shepherd, published his private member's bill, which outlines legislative details of a series of reforms, including decriminalising possession of small amounts of restricted drugs for personal use and ensuring that overdose prevention facilities, also known as drug consumption rooms, can operate legally. It would also see excessive drug use treated as a health emergency instead of a criminal matter. The bill has cross-party backing and is supported by a range of organisations, including Transform Drug Policy Foundation, Release and the Scottish Drug Forum. The legislative changes in it are based on evidence gathered by the Scottish Affairs Select Committee in 2019 and from those affected by drug use, academics and service providers and others with significant expertise in this area. Chris, this is an excellent idea, isn't it? And it seems to be emerging mostly from Scottish side of the House of Commons. And we know that the SNP here in Holyrood is very much in favour of these changes. Would you back this plan to decriminalise the possession of small amounts of restricted drugs for personal use and the idea of safe consumption rooms to help prevent overdoses?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. But I think we should also point out the fact that Welsh Labour are also in favour of decriminalisation as well. And again, Carwyn Jones was talking about the need for safe consumption rooms. Also. This is
the First Minister of Wales, Chris. Yes.
Yeah. So it's. What gets me about the whole approach to drugs is the fact that the UK government seem to hold on to this reserved matter, and they use it to beat the SNP over the head with a massive big wooden mallet, so that we are showing up to be the sick man of Europe, we. As far as I can ascertain from Tommy Shepherd, that we're actually getting cross-party support in Westminster for a radical change in the way that how drugs are actually treated by the Westminster government. It's also fair to say as well that far too much of police time and police effort has been wasted on small seizures of personal use Class B drugs, where they could be actually utilising their ideas and their skills on bigger and more sort of like insidious gangs that are actually flooding the country en masse with illegal substances that isn't actually controlled. If Scotland was able to take the same approach as what Lisbon has done in Portugal, and I've seen this at first-hand purposes, the fact that Lisbon was able to decrease its drug misuse by up to 95% in the first year of opening drug consumption rooms.
Okay,
and having outreach facilities as well, mobile outreach facilities as well.
So it seems, Chris, that this could be a major success, but obviously, for reasons best known to the British government, they don't want Scotland to have the power to do that. Anyway, Chris, I'm sorry, we've come to the end of our evening together yet again, and of course it's time for me to remind our viewers that Broadcasting Scotland is still in a crowdfunder, and we would like your support. So if you would like us to continue making more programmes like this, you can help us by becoming a regular supporter for £5 a month, or you can make an individual donation, however small, whatever you can afford, or you can even volunteer to join the crew here at the studio. But anyway, that information was on your screens a moment ago. But anyway, Chris, thank you again for being an excellent guest as usual.
No, pleasure, Gordon. Thank you.
And from all of us here at the studio at Scotland at 7, a very good evening to you.
comfortable.
How do you mean no more commission?
Well, no one in Scotland can commission an idea. You know, if I went to BBC Scotland and I said, oh, I've got this great idea for a sitcom, I've got this brilliant idea for a drama, you know, there isn't one person in Scotland that can okay it unless it goes through London.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Full Scottish. What's happening today?
Hello and welcome to the Full Scottish here on Broadcasting Scotland.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
That need, that desire for independence is ever stronger than perhaps it was in 2014. So there's an obligation that we've got to give leadership to that campaign. That's what Nicola Sturgeon, as our First Minister, has been doing.
My feeling about Boris Johnson is he can't be trusted on anything.
That is now and forever will be known as the rape clause.
I'm old enough to remember going into Europe in '73, and I remember how much of a razor's edge that was balanced on. And I think we made it by 53%, if I remember correctly, for going in. And ever since that time, England particularly has been pretty much schizophrenic, down the middle about whether it felt British or whether it felt European. And that schism, that crack has remained throughout English society ever since.
Scotland means business. Scotland's voice won't be stilled, it won't be silenced, it has to be heard.
The work that's been done by Broadcasting Scotland in giving community activists, yes activists, Scottish activists a platform other than the traditional media outlets.